Okay, ladies and gentlemen, it is 7 o'clock, and I will call our August Town Council meeting to order, and welcome all those who are here in the council chambers with us, and welcome all those who are watching online. We're glad to have you all. It promises to be a long night, but we will move it along as quickly as we can. With that, Mr. Ken Copeland, who's a church leader at the Farmville Baptist Church, is joining us tonight for the invocation. Mr. Copeland, we're glad to have you, and after you do the invocation, Vice Mayor Reed, if you would kindly lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Okay.
My pleasure to be here. Let's pray together. Heavenly Father, in whom we live and move and have our being, we give you thanks this day for the beauty of the earth and for the fullness thereof. In this time of unrest and uncertainty, we give you thanks, Lord, for the knowledge that you are still in control. And that we pray, Lord, that you would bless the proceedings that go on here tonight, and that you would continue to bless our town and all that make a living and live here each day. We also ask, Lord, your blessing on both the schools and all the, both the colleges and all the schools that are bringing students back, either in person or online. There's a lot of unrest and uncertainty around that. Give us knowledge and wisdom to do the right thing and to be the best stewards for these students' education that we can be. Thank you, Lord, for all members of this council and for the work that they do to make this town the great place that it is to live and work. And we give you thanks, Lord, in all things through Christ our Savior. Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, John. Madam Clerk, would you kindly call the roll?
Mr. Cole?
Here.
Mr. Hunter?
Here.
Mr. Benson?
Here.
Mr. Parrott?
Here.
Mr. Dwyer?
Here.
Mr. Reed?
Here.
And Mrs. Angel? Here.
Okay, with that, I will open our first public hearing tonight, resolution number 2020-08-01, authorizing support and the submission of funding application to the Commonwealth Transportation Board through the biennial Smart Scale Program for the continuous green T layout, Griffin Boulevard. Do we have anyone that signed up,
No, sir,
Madam
Mayor.
Clerk, for that purpose?
There's no one signed up.
No one signed up. Is there anyone that wishes to speak to that matter? Mr. Davis, do you have any comments?
We can hear from Rick Youngblood, so he doesn't have to stay on the line until the last part of the meeting, if you would like.
That's fine.
I believe he's on the call. Rick, are you here?
Maybe.
Rick?
Okay, if he is not there, okay, if he's not there and no one wishes to speak, I will bring that public hearing to a close. The next public hearing, resolution number 2020-08-02, authorizing support and the submission of funding application to the Commonwealth Transportation Board through the biennial Smart Scale Program for the 643 High Street and Oak Street Griffin Boulevard roundabout project. Madam Clerk, do we have folks signed up for?
Yes, sir. First, we have on the conference line Greg Sigaritis.
Sigaritas?
Is Mr. Sigaritas on the conference line?
Okay.
Next, we have a letter by Jack and Diane Carey of 3rd Avenue.
I'll read this, Mayor. It's a little lengthy, but I'll read it. To the members of Farmville Town Council, we are writing to you because we are still strongly opposed to the proposed roundabout at the intersection of High Street, Oak Street, Appomattox Street, and Griffin Boulevard. My family moved to Farmville in 1958, and I grew up in the Greens residential subdivision. My wife Diane grew up in Rice, Virginia, and we have lived at 611 3rd Avenue for over 30 years. We have driven through that intersection many, many times. That intersection with the current setup that it has now is the safest and best that it has ever been for both vehicles and pedestrians. If we thought that there was a safety issue with that intersection, we would be the first ones to say, let's look at the problem and see what we can do to fix it. That is not the case here because it is one of the safest intersections in town. My wife drove through a roundabout twice a day going to and from work in Lynchburg, Virginia, and she has never liked roundabouts. One thing she noticed was that a fair number of drivers would speed up and not slow down going into the circle while also not paying attention to the yield sign. This, along with inconsiderate drivers, would not allow vehicles to feed into the roundabout from the side streets, causing longer wait times for other drivers and decreased safety in the intersection. Another concern we have is what happens when you have an accident in a roundabout. At this intersection, you would basically tie up 5 streets and make it extremely difficult for the police, rescue squad, and fire department to get through the intersection in an emergency. Also, speaking of the fire department, and this may not be a problem, but will their very long ladder trucks be able to get through the roundabout? It would take a pretty good sized roundabout to handle the ladder truck. Our biggest concern that no one is saying much about is pedestrian safety. We have been through several roundabouts and they have all been in low pedestrian traffic areas. This is a busy intersection, vehicle-wise and pedestrian-wise, which is only going to be made worse by the new student housing that is being built there. You are going to have pedestrians, some who are on their cell phones not paying attention to the traffic, trying to get to the other side of the roundabout with no benefit of a dedicated walk lane, and has traffic lights or pedestrian lights to safely get them to the other side of the circle. Drivers will not only have to look out for vehicles feeding into the roundabout, but also will have to look out for the pedestrians walking everywhere. We hope and pray that it does not happen, but we think that this is an accident waiting to happen. The last point we would like to make is that it has been said that it's VDOT grant money and it's free money, so let's spend it on the roundabout. Grant money is not free money. It is our taxpayer money that would be better spent in a grant to improve a street or intersection that really needs it. A great example of that, and our hats off to the council on this, is the intersection of South Main and Millwood. That was money well spent, and that intersection was greatly improved. A roundabout at High Street, Oak Street, Appomattox Street, and Griffin Boulevard would be a waste of grant money because it will not improve that intersection since it is already one of the safest intersections in town. My wife and I urge you not to vote for the proposed roundabout because it is not needed and not necessary. Thank you for your time. Respectfully, Jack and Diane Perry.
Thank you, sir. Next.
We have Joan and Donna Van Cleve from High Street with an email.
Good afternoon. We write to express our support for the proposed 643 High Street and Oak Street Griffin Boulevard roundabout project. We are very familiar with roundabouts, particularly from our time spent in Blacksburg, Virginia. The roundabouts in that town have improved traffic flow and safety. We are confident a roundabout on High Street, Oak Street, Griffin Boulevard would have the same impact in Farmville. Thank you for the opportunity to provide input on this project.
Thank you.
Next, we have Francis Bailey of High Street with an email.
To all Farmville council members and the town manager, I would very much like to see a change made to the intersection of Oak, Griffin, and High. I believe a roundabout to replace the traffic light would eliminate the constant 24/7 idling of cars and trucks, many with radios blaring and engines with no mufflers revving. The intersection is located in a historic neighborhood of the town, and a uniform flow of traffic would create a more peaceful existence and cleaner air for residents and students. Because the state has allocated funds for this project and highly recommended it for safety and traffic flow, it seems like a no-brainer to take advantage of an opportunity to make such a major improvement to the town. Thank you for your time, Francis Bailey.
Thank you, sir. Next guest.
Norwood Bailey of High Street, email.
To council and the town manager, my name is Norwood Bailey and I reside at 604 High Street. I am strongly in favor of the proposed roundabout and support the resolution submitting the application for the project. I believe this would improve the functionality of the intersection as well as the noise level. We have an unacceptable level of noise in our location from pickup trucks with no mufflers or illegal mufflers and motorcycles. A large number of these drivers feel compelled to and seem to delight in sitting at the light, gunning the engine and taking off on the green light, speeding past us in the Longwood Alumni House, reaching speeds in excess of 25 miles per hour. This is a nuisance for all the residents who live on this section of High Street. The present situation with a stoplight and a straight shot up High Street is akin to a drag strip. These drivers take full advantage of this arrangement, and a roundabout will help. This problem must not be new, since inbound to Farmville and High Street is a sign stating that the noise ordinance will be enforced. The more significant issue is the safety benefits to both traffic and pedestrians, as well as improved aesthetics offered by the roundabout at little or no cost to the town. Thank you, Norwood Bailey.
Thank you, sir. Madam Clerk.
Louise Waller, Longwood.
Welcome, Ms. Waller. Glad you're here.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I'm very excited to talk about the roundabout. We have been talking about the roundabout for maybe 5 years now, and it never gets dull. It really doesn't. As you all know, Longwood University is very supportive of the roundabout. We have written a letter of support to VDOT, pledging the properties needed that Longwood owns to make the roundabout possible. Longwood is primarily supportive of the roundabout for 3 major reasons. Number 1 is safety. There have been several studies now that have shown that this intersection needs to be addressed for reasons. And the roundabout has been recommended by the experts as the safest solution possible. The second primary reason for supporting the roundabout is efficiency. Roundabouts have been proven to be the most efficient way to handle traffic, especially at surge points when there's an event or activity and there's a lot of traffic coming through. And the last primary reason for supporting is the future development of this town. I'm from Farmville. I grew up here. I live on First Avenue now, and I firmly and passionately believe that Longwood is one of the best places to live in Virginia, and only more people are going to want to move here. So we need to be smart and develop for the future, and the roundabout's the right infrastructure to prepare for the Farmville of tomorrow. And then lastly, I think it really is great that our friends at VDOT have helped us identify this challenge and are willing to contribute funds to fix it. So I just feel very, very fortunate to live in Farmville and for the support of VDOT. So thank you all very much.
Thank you. Madam Clerk.
Faye Green, First Avenue.
Welcome, Ms. Green.
Hello again. We've been doing this for 5 years now, I think, so you've probably heard everything I have to say about why I believe we should have the roundabout. But here goes for the last time we have. There have been numerous feasibility studies and as many public hearings. The studies have all very clearly recommended a roundabout as the best solution. Residents in the area have voiced strong support. Longwood has encouraged and enabled its construction. And those who fear it have voiced concern, but they speak mostly from either fear or misunderstanding. Statistics show that roundabouts reduce injury and crashes by 76%, reduce pedestrian accidents by 40%, reduce toxic emissions and the carbon footprint, reduce queues at the light, delete the need to gun it and make the light, thus reducing speeds, delete the high cost of maintaining the lights, create an intersection that's more pedestrian, child, and bike friendly, create a storm-proof intersection that works even without electricity, eliminates overhead wires and ugly signal lights, and creates a beautiful green area. Progressive areas around the United States and around the world have all embraced the roundabout with tremendous acceptance and success. Please don't wait any longer. I urge you to request the Smart Scale funding for this program tonight.
Thank you. Madam Clerk?
Mr. Yolen signed up on the regular public comment, but did you want to speak now or during the public comment?
Was the public comments, I beg your pardon, was the public comments the letter that I wrote? I'm sorry.
Public comment is for general
I
comments.
must have signed the wrong paper. I'd like to speak now, please.
Have it.
Mr. Adam Yolen.
Welcome, Mr. Gill.
Thank you. Sorry for the confusion. Adam Yolen, 600 High Street. My wife and I strongly support the roundabout. We've done our very best to never bring this up as a personal situation, even though that we're the ones who live on that intersection now. I guess I just want you all to know that I respect the time and commitment that you put into this all these 5 years, and that whichever way you end up deciding, we bear no bad feelings, or we won't take it personally at all. I just hope you'll do your best for us and the town of Farmville, and thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Madam Clerk?
Mr. Greg Cigarettas.
Is Mr. Sigaritas on the conference line now? They're showing on. They're showing on the conference as an attendee, so I'm not sure why.
Okay, we'll try someone else.
Naomi Cigarettas.
She on the conference
She
line?
would be on the same line, I believe. Rick Youngblood, can you hear us? Anybody on the conference line?
Is there anyone there?
They're showing as actors. There's,
Automatic two-way, or do they have to press?
no, they're unmuted because I can mute them or unmute.
While we're doing that, Madam Clerk, is there anyone else that's here in person that wishes to speak?
That's all I have on the list.
Is there anyone else that did not sign up that's with us that would like to speak in regard to the roundabout? Technology is wonderful. Anyone? Do you have a phone number, particularly for Rick Youngblood, that you could call and perhaps put him on speakerphone so we can hear him?
I can't do this.
Rick Youngblood, by the way, is with VDOT, so we really would like to hear from Mr. Youngblood tonight. Yeah, that's what I'm thinking.
She's gonna check, we have a phone in the conference room as well. And so she's gonna see, I guess, if actually can do that. Because if not, beginning, it was in the budget, so we have to have. If not, I can call these numbers. Mr. Sigaritas? But we can, Mr. Sigaritas?
Yes.
This is Scott Davis from the town of Farmville. The conference line was not working, so we're going to do it this way, if that's all right.
That's fine.
All right.
All right, you know everything?
Okay, I think we're good.
All right. My name is Greg Sigaritas, and I'm with the 411 Second Avenue. Thank you for the time to speak and for providing the call-in option. I support the proposed roundabout to improve the intersection at Oak, High, and Griffin. I agree with McCormick Taylor, the Federal Highway Administration, and Virginia Department of Transportation, who all state that properly designed roundabouts reduce the severity of accidents for drivers, cyclists, and pedestrians, while also reducing time and gas wasted at a stoplight. Now, for 3 years, I've heard and read many arguments from those opposed to the roundabout, anecdotal evidence and gut reactions claiming that roundabouts are dangerous. The ER will be full. Farmville drivers can't handle it. Local tow truck businesses will be overwhelmed. Longwood students are different than pedestrians and students across the country. And the fact is, the studies and data just don't back that up. So construction, while it will be an inconvenience, will result in a safer alternative. I've navigated roundabouts in both large and small towns across the world as a driver, cyclist, and pedestrian, and I find them easy and efficient to simply yield to oncoming traffic and then drive slowly into your exit. But that's my personal anecdotal evidence. I ask that the council follow the recommendations of federal, state, and private organizations who actually study traffic. These experts recommend roundabouts where appropriate. McCormick Taylor deemed it appropriate at the Oak, High, and Griffin intersection in 2017, and VDOT supports that finding. Let's build for the future in Farmville. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Madam Clerk, we have someone else?
Mr. Sigaritas, is Mrs. Sigaritas available?
She is. She's right here.
All right.
Thanks for allowing me to speak. This is Naomi Sigaritas, and I just wanted to add that I also support the roundabout. Having seen a number of students over the years as I travel to Longwood trying to navigate the intersection as it is now, a little bit scary. And based on all of the things that Greg said, as well as our own experiences of traveling, I say I have experienced very easy access to roundabouts as a traveler in a car and as someone who is walking or biking. So I hope that it's something that we support moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. We appreciate your comments. Anyone else, Madam Clerk?
No, sir.
Anyone else who wishes to speak? If not, I will bring this public hearing to a close.
Do you want me to give you a
Yep. If you can. You can actually speak in the general comments section if you can't get it, because we have other guests waiting.
Hey, Rick, it's Scott Davis with the town.
Good evening. How are you?
Good. you are live for our meeting. Could you
Okay.
give a short presentation on each of these topics with the green tea layout first and then the roundabout project at Oak Griffin and High?
Sure, I'd be happy to. Well, for those that may not know me, my name is Rick Youngblood. I'm the District Planning Manager for VDOT based out of our Lynchburg office. I've been working in this position for over 20 years and enjoying my working relationship with the town. And where we're at this stage is we conducted a study back in 2017 timeframe along the Route 15 corridor, and specifically from Griffin Boulevard all the way up to the Route 460 interchange. At this particular intersection, we looked at a number of different alternatives, roundabouts, different intersection alternatives, and the least expensive and best approach that we found is what we call a green tea intersection or a green tea alternative. And what this allows us to do is it allows for continuous through movements on the northbound lane heading back into the town, into the Langwood University. And it includes an additional right turn lane in order to make a right turn on the southbound lane, turning on the Griffin Boulevard. The signal phases would go from a 4-phase signal to a 2-phase signal. You would have continuous flow, as I mentioned, on the northbound lanes heading back into Farmville. And additional lanes there would be turned into additional right or left turn lanes, protected left turn lanes that would be controlled by the signal. This particular project, majority of the project fits within existing right-of-way along the Route 15 corridor there. There will be some right-of-way that will be needed for the right turn lane, and that would be adjacent to the Robert Russo Moten Museum. We understand the significance and history of that museum and that location, and as a part of our project and moving forward, be working with property owners there and everybody to be the least impactful as possible. But again, the nice thing is very little right of way. We would use the majority of the traffic lanes that are in existence at that location. Again, this is a rather unique alternative, but one we feel will provide the most efficient flow of traffic and also correct the safety concerns that are at this location. It is what we consider a high-class location.
Rick, could you, when you say minimal, what are you talking about? Feet? Or are you talking about how much when you say minimal? I know it's not
We would be looking anywhere from about 10 to 11 feet of property adjacent to the Moten Museum. Majority of that property would be closer to Griffin and not, it's directly adjacent to the Moten Museum itself. We do have a little bit of a taper that would start at that location back towards the museum. Majority of the property would be closer to Griffin Boulevard. So we would not impact any of the existing parking or anything there. It would just be more the yard area there in front.
Rick, have you explored those options with Moten yet?
What was the question?
Have you explored the options with the Moten Museum?
I know when we had the original study, but I can't remember exactly who it was. We had some discussions and brought this up. I know that, again, understanding the historical significance there and everything, we're obligated as a state agency to protect as much of that property as possible. So we would only utilize what property is necessary in order to get that dedicated right turn lane in.
Any other questions from council members?
I guess the question was, to me, wasn't answered whether they contacted Moten yet. I guess it was the read. Can you give us any information on that? I would like for him to contact Morton again so we can get an update on their conversation before we make a decision.
If I understood it correctly, he's bound by law as far as the state not to impact any more absolutely necessary.
But I still think they need to be discussed.
Did you hear any of that, Rick?
I believe I was hearing something in regards to contacting the Motor Museum.
Yes, and having that discussion with them.
I believe I've got a contact that I can touch base with.
Okay.
Or if you want to provide somebody a direct contact, you can feel free to email that to me. We'll reach out to them.
We can do that. And when does this, what's the deadline for this resolution? It got moved back. Originally, it had to be filed with the application, but now
Correct.
it recently has been pushed back to October. But what's the date in October?
October 1st.
Okay, so we could approve this at the September meeting.
Absolutely.
And so in between that time, VDOT could have conversations with those individuals that are able to make some decisions at the Motor Museum.
I'll be happy to have that conversation with you. Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions?
You know, and just to let everybody know, from a study perspective, we try to involve as many people as we can. And at some point in time, some of those individuals aren't able to participate. I know if the project was selected, we would have that direct partnership with the town, Longwood, and the Motor Museum, as the project is a significant project for the area. So there will be many, and the same holds true with the roundabout. There will be many opportunities for public involvement as we move through the process.
Okay, thank you, sir. Any other questions on this? If not, we'll move to the roundabout.
Yes, could you give a brief presentation about the roundabout too?
Absolutely. So the second project in the town, in both of these, the Green Tea intersection of Griffin and the location here at High Griffin, both of these are what we call potential for safety improvement intersections, PSI. So they rank high enough because they've had enough accidents that they rank high enough that we were able to go in and do some evaluation to see what type of alternatives. Building off of a study that the town conducted back in 2017 with McCormick Taylor, we know that there was a public involvement phase or a public meeting that was held at that point when the roundabout initially came up as an alternative. What VDOT has done in partnership with Longwood and the town is we are now looking at the roundabout alternative and actually taking it to 30% design. We've conducted a survey out at this location. We've had communication with some of the property owners. We've met with Longwood. We've met with the town. And we know of some economic development potential that's going out at this location as well. Taking all of that information into play, we've come up with a conceptual design that supports various types of issues that are going on out at the location. One, we know that there's heavy pedestrian and bike movements through this. The roundabout supports those. We know that the intersection supports the local hospital, supports Longwood. There's a cut-through area supporting the town and the downtown area. And the roundabout supports those traffic volumes. We also are aware that there are sometimes heavy freight movements that work through here, and the roundabout is sized accordingly in order to accommodate those movements as well. So basically what we're looking at is a single lane roundabout to come into this geometrically, what we consider a geometrically challenged intersection, and really simplifying the intersection, increasing pedestrian walkway movements, increasing the opportunity for higher volumes of traffic to come through the intersection, albeit at a slower speed. So it's a the roundabout concept works very well at this location. And, you know, in working with Longwood, we understand their desire to do some additional possible future expansion. And again, we've worked with the town understanding the economic development potential of some surrounding parcels. And we've all tied that into the design concept.
Okay, any other questions, Councilman, have any questions?
I've got one, because we referred to the McCormick Taylor study a few times. But correct me if I'm wrong, that study listed the roundabout as number 2 for pedestrian safety, and the straightening the road as number 1. What's changed? We're saying that this is going to be able to handle the heavy pedestrian traffic, particularly we've got new college facilities there with, they're going to have students in it. So what's changed about that safety?
Did you get that?
So there was concerns in the McCormick Taylor study about pedestrian movements.
Saying, well, I think Mr. Cole was saying that the pedestrian safety was ranked second the roundabout was second. Pedestrian safety was ranked second for roundabouts.
Straightening the road was ranked number 1 for pedestrian safety.
Ranked as first for pedestrians. He's wondering how this has changed.
Well, the design components between McCormick Taylor's study and what we've come up with now, roundabouts are safe for pedestrians. And the movements here, a couple things come into play. One, it shortens the pedestrian movements across the segments of road. You've only got 4 segments that you'll be dealing with. The way the median islands are established, there are safety, what we call kind of waste areas or safety areas, buffers, that if traffic is either speed-wise or whatever, there's an area that they can sit in order to allow the traffic to move through and then have a shorter distance of travel. The third thing with the roundabouts is the speeds entering the roundabout are much slower. And because traffic is allowed to move through the roundabout at a free pace based upon available openings, there's usually more areas open between the platoon of cars. So pedestrians should have a very easy time coming from one sidewalk crossing into another, but also have that safety area in the center that they can sit if traffic volumes are high enough that they can't get through. But typically speaking, what we found with the roundabouts is because the speeds are lower, pedestrians have much more opportunities to cross the road at a shorter distance.
That's an assumption that they will actually yield to a car that's coming around and not just go out in front of them like we have right now. You know, the pedestrian etiquette on High Street is not much to be enjoyed. That's what concerns. And also the crosswalk that's currently up there now where the parking is, does that go away? Because that's a big issue when you're talking about backup, particularly in the afternoon as people are coming to their cars from the university, and the light is green, people coming off of Oak, and it's backed up. It's still backed up into Oak Street sometimes because of that foot traffic that's coming across. I don't know whether that shows that here or not, but that would be a problem if that stays.
Well, I know the existing crosswalks out there, you've got some fairly long areas that they have to get through. And, you know, again, because of the free flow volume through the roundabout, there's usually going to be more, and what we have found in the current roundabouts that we have, there's more opportunities for pedestrians to get across, and those areas that they're crossing are shorter than what's out there now. So you're creating a safer environment.
This pedestrian crossing is on above the roundabout.
He's talking about a crosswalk that is closer to the parking lot that Longwood has across the street from the Chichester building.
Okay.
But part of that parking lot is also going away as part of this, correct?
Correct. There, in order to work with the existing topography and the potential for the property that we know we'll be able to work on, most of this is all going to occur on Longwood's property. So a portion of that side, or a portion of the parking lot out there will get transitioned because we're actually shifting the road over. So the same would apply for that crosswalk area. That crosswalk may still be there. It is downstream, part of the project, but looking at the conceptual, I can see the crosswalk there, and more than likely that would be put back in, but we associate it based on the how the road's cut.
And that would be a problem. It's a problem right now with the red lights. And you've got continuous traffic, it's still going to be a problem.
Rick, if this project isn't done, the question is, now that it's been defined as this intersection, the way it's currently coordinated, would VDOT, based on funding purposes, say that there has to be some type of change and it cannot stay as it exists?
VDOT would look at low cost improvements to better the situation. I know that they've looked at the signalization out there. They've looked at the crosswalks, and they've looked at the low cost options. In order to completely fix the intersection, it would either have to be something that's funded through the Smart Scale program or Highway Safety Improvement Funds. We don't think that from an HSIP standpoint, this particular intersection would meet the threshold. This is one of the reasons why we're looking at Smart Scale. Because of the infrastructure that's out there, it's not a cheap project, and it's something that, from a VDOT perspective, we're not just arbitrarily going to go out and do a corrective measure on a large scale at that location. We would work with the town in identifying, low-cost improvements that could be done. But ultimately, if the growth still continues in this area, your traffic volumes and Longwood's growth grows, you're still going to have those same issues. The roundabout, in theory, is going to correct a lot of those at the intersection. I can't control, what the pedestrians do on the downstream side outside of the roundabout, but the roundabout defines those pedestrian movements and gives them better opportunities to get across.
Okay, do we have any other questions? Anybody have any other questions?
Just one. There's a resident that contacted me, and they live in the street right off of Grove Street. And so she's concerned that she's coming out Grove Street, making a left onto Oak Street in the direction of the roundabout, that it's in her mind that it's going to be, that track will be backed up and she won't be able to make that left-hand turn. Will the roundabout keep that traffic flowing to avoid that backup? Does that make sense?
I think.
The roundabout, as opportunities present themselves, cars, typically speaking, in a roundabout that's working appropriately, cars aren't ever coming to a full stop. They're coming to a slow, looking left, identifying those gaps, and then moving through. I can't say that during high peak hours, there may not be an occasional backup there, but we've got two roundabouts here right in the, off of Ward's Road, right in the economic development section where Best Buy, Sam's and all. It's a micro roundabout is what we call it, and it sits very close to a very high volume traffic signal. And I have seen cars back up, but I've never seen cars back up into the intersection. And typically speaking, there's only 4 or 5 cars that may back up at any one time. And that's typically because through the learning curve of learning to go through a roundabout, people come to a stop when they should have, some flow to continue moving so they can get in those gaps.
Mr. Youngblood, one question. Should the town of Farmville be successful in the funding of this, what kind of time frame are we looking at? I think the last time we had this discussion, we decided it was 5 to 7 years or something. before we could actually get
Right.
it.
And that still holds true. Our smart scale, this particular round, we're looking at fiscal year start of fiscal year 26. So basically August of 2025 would be the start date, and then you're looking at a 6-year time frame between starting fiscal year 26, add date probably in about 28, with construction leaning towards 2030.
So 10 years we'll drive one.
10 years, unless we get surplus funding through gas tax, and we're able to accelerate projects.
So we're looking at 8 to 10 years.
Potentially, yes, sir.
Okay. Any other questions?
Is that for both projects?
Is that for both projects or just the roundabout?
It would be the same holds true with both projects. Unless there's private or public money that comes into it that can start projects earlier, typically speaking, we run on the cycle. Now, the one thing about this particular roundabout project is my planning dollars that I'm putting towards this project now, the survey that we've already done, we will have the first part of the PE process complete when our effort is done for this particular project. So the intention is to have 30% plans, design plans completed when we're done with this particular project that we're currently working through.
Okay. Thank you. Any other questions? If not, Mr. Youngblood, thank you for your time. Do we have any other speakers, Madam Clerk?
No, sir.
Okay.
Yes.
With that, I will bring this public hearing to a close, and we will return to the regular order of business. And Ashley, if you'll ask our speakers who are out there waiting here next on the agenda, if they would please join us. They're outside. Okay, obviously over the last few weeks, there's been a lot of media coverage of the ICA facility, and so tonight we have Jeff Crawford. And is there someone else going to join us?
Mr. Harper is here, but I'll be doing the majority of remarks.
Okay. You are the director of the local ICA facility. Go ahead and introduce yourself.
Yeah, thank you very much. Good evening, Mayor Whitus and members of the Town Council. My name is Jeff Crawford. I'm the director of the Farmville Detention Center. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak with you about the COVID-19 situation at the facility and answer any questions you may have. Many things have been reported by various news outlets that have caused a lot of attention for the facility and understandably raised concerns for the town and the greater Farmville community. My hope is that I will be able to assuage any concerns that you may have. There is some tragic news that I must address as part of my remarks, which was the death of a detainee on August 5th. But there's a lot of good news that I must share as well. I will start with the good news to give some context to the situation. The context should remove a lot of the anxiety and concern about the situation in general. Our population is currently 285 detainees, which is only 39% of our capacity. Since July 10th, we have documented 0 detainees and 0 staff with any symptoms of COVID-19. That means by this Friday, it will have been 5 weeks since we have had any symptoms documented among the detainees or staff in our building.
5 weeks.
5 weeks.
5 weeks.
Yes, sir. We have administered over 700 COVID-19 tests. Yes, we had many positives of COVID-19, but there is a great difference between being positive for COVID-19 and being sick. And no one seems to be differentiating between the two. At the height of our situation, when we had the greatest number of quote-unquote sick detainees, that number approximated 3% of our population, or about 10 detainees at any given time. Half of those sick detainees had low-grade fevers only, and that was their only symptom. We had approximately 4 or 5 detainees with symptoms that would be commonly described as flu-like symptoms, involving body aches or elevated fever, nausea, or chills. Among those 4 or 5 detainees, some of them had serious symptoms. So my understanding is that in the majority of cases, those symptoms only lasted 24 hours, and in a couple cases, at most, 48 hours. Much of what the news has been reporting for the last 2 weeks was news that was over a month old to those of us that are in the facility before it came out in public. We understand the stories looked terrible. We understand the circumstances were characterized by the media as dire. We understand that the claims of the detainees on their face seem horrible, but I can tell you that I have been present at the facility through the entire ordeal, and it was not a dire situation. Out of all of our detainees who tested positive for COVID-19, 97% of them never had a symptom of illness. And as I said, there have been no symptoms in the building for almost 5 weeks. Much of the news that has been reported in many papers and on many TV stations is utterly and patently false. As a facility, we are normally restrained from commenting, especially to news media reports by the federal government. They insist that they make all of the media statements. That puts us in the unfortunate position that we are unable to defend ourselves or comment many times on things that are said. But the notion that we did not adequately respond to the COVID-19 situation at the facility is false. The notion that our detainees and staff are ill is false. The assertion that our detainees are not receiving medical care is false. The notion that we are not conducting COVID-19 testing or that testing was inadequate is false. The allegation that our detainees do not have access to PPE or hand sanitizer or soap is false. These and many other allegations from detainees are the things that are being reported in the media. There are several lawsuits that have been filed by detainees seeking release from ICE custody because of the COVID-19 situation. That has happened nationally and is not unique to the Farmville Detention Center. In the lawsuits filed against us, detainees have alleged horrible conditions. They've made allegations that people are sick everywhere, that they lie on the floor for days without assistance, that they receive no medical care, and various other inflammatory accusations. I can tell you that I have absolutely zero concerns about our ability to refute those allegations in court. We strongly refute the allegations of the detainees. We have filed our own rebuttals in court under oath. Unfortunately, most news media outlets will not print or report our position. They only report the detainees' allegations. Even when we do get the opportunity to respond to inquiries for comment, those comments are usually left out of the stories. Since the onset of this situation, we've had constant and continual communication with the local chapter of the Virginia Department of Health. We have followed their guidelines. We have followed the CDC guidelines since the very beginning. The facility increased the number of hand washing and sanitizing stations throughout the facility. We supplied every person in our care with 8 masks each, 4 of which are N95 masks, 2 of which are cloth masks, and 2 of which are surgical masks like you all are wearing. We are a facility of intense documentation, specifically because of situations like this. We realize that in today's day and age, anyone can accuse anyone of anything. I am not concerned by allegations. I live by facts. Many of those facts are inconvenient truths for news media outlets, detainees, and their attorneys. Almost every news article I have read has accused us of a lack of medical treatment. The perception of detainees is that since they are positive for COVID-19, there should be some sort of treatment. But when you are asymptomatic of COVID-19, there is no treatment to give you. Absent a virus for this vaccine, absent a vaccine for this virus, there is no treatment. The treatment comes into play if and when you develop symptoms. So with a detainee population that is 97% asymptomatic, there is no treatment for 97% of the population. But I do want to tell you what we were doing medically for the detainees to again give you the full context of the situation. Throughout most of this situation, our detainees were seen on a daily basis, in person, by a nurse up to 4 times per day. Every detainee was given a medical screening and evaluated by a nurse on 2 of those occasions, unless the detainee refused. And when a detainee refuses treatment, we make them refuse in writing, so we have evidence of their refusal. The reason we screened every detainee twice per day is because we wanted to actively monitor our population to determine if people were getting ill. Every detainee also had the opportunity to see a nurse twice per day during times when medication is issued to the population. So each and every detainee in our custody saw a nurse face to face 4 times per day. There was also a standing order from the facility physician for over-the-counter medication to treat symptoms that they may report. Approximately 3 weeks ago, we reduced the number of encounters from 4 times per day to 3 times per day, because clinically speaking, there was no one with symptoms in the building, and we felt it was appropriate that we could ratchet down our level of response. As to the death of the detainee, he came into our custody on April 15th, 2020. He was 72 years old and a Canadian national. He was screened on a daily basis, just as I've described, for all the other detainees while he was in our care during this situation. During his screening on July 3rd, he had a complaint of shortness of breath, and the nurse observed that his oxygen saturation levels were low. He was immediately sent to Central Southside Hospital via ambulance out of an abundance of caution. They monitored him for 22 hours, and they discharged him back to our facility. He was checked again by our medical staff upon his return from the hospital, which is our policy and procedure, and then he was returned to his housing unit. At 9 p.m. on July 4th, he asked to come back up to medical and see a nurse. He was admitted to medical observation and he lived in medical observation for the next 7 days, where his vital signs were checked every 4 hours by a nurse for 7 days. On July 10th, he was again taken to Central Southside Hospital about 9 p.m., again because of low oxygen saturation levels, diminished breathing sounds, and complaint of shortness of breath during his routine vitals check. At 5 a.m. on July 11th, Central Southside made the decision to transfer him to Lynchburg General Hospital in Lynchburg, Virginia. He remained a patient in Lynchburg General Hospital for 4 weeks, from July 11th until the date of his death. We are very sorry for his loss. We do not want to see anyone who is in our care pass away. But unfortunately, due to current federal guidelines, he was a mandatory hold in ICE detention due to his criminal background as a convicted felon. And unfortunately, he fell into the demographic of people for whom this virus can be more deadly. Some news accounts have reported that he was subjected to tear gas and violence and a use of force situation while he was at our facility. That too is false. We are in possession of information that he told his family in Canada that those things happened to him while he was in our care, and that his family is the source of that information to the media. But we have documentation and video surveillance that clearly refutes that. And again, I have zero concerns about answering that allegation. As to staff, we have approximately 230 employees. 42 total staff have gone to their private health providers for testing for COVID-19 because they exhibited some sort of symptom. 13 of our employees who were tested came back negative, 28 were positive, and 1 is pending. Of the 28 who were positive, 27 have been cleared by their physicians and are already back at work. At the onset of COVID-19 back in March, and in concurrence with the Prince Edward County Health Department, we assessed our staff and we immediately sent home any of our employees who were in a high-risk category. And when I say went home, we put them on a telework status. We continued to pay them their full salaries and still continue to pay them their full salaries. Our employees have been following their physician's advice and CDC guidelines to ensure that the risk to our communities and our families are mitigated as much as possible. We also implemented a policy back in March that if any staff member of ours was sick for any reason, they should let us know and they should go see their doctor. We further told them that if they were removed from work by their doctor, we would continue to pay them as though they were working their normal schedules. And we would not make them use their paid time off benefits. And we have done that as well, because we wanted to ensure the staff would not take a risk of coming to the facility if they were ill because they had concerns about financials. This has not only been a commitment to our staff, but also a commitment to our communities and those in our care. The last notion that I'll address is a common thread among those that are opposed to immigration detention facilities in general, like ours, and that is the notion that there is no oversight of our kind of facilities. I have been in corrections and detention for almost 26 years, and I have worked in everything from a small jail in Alaska to maximum custody and death row in Leavenworth, Kansas. I can tell you that ICE detention facilities have more oversight than at any other facility I have ever worked for in my career. On average, your garden variety prison or jail might get an inspection once a year by state officials. The average inspection schedule for my facility averages 3 per year, or 4 sometimes. We are inspected annually by ICE. In addition, we're inspected randomly and whenever they want by the Civil Rights and Civil Liberties Division of Homeland Security. We're inspected by the Office of Professional Responsibility by the Department of Homeland Security. We're inspected by the Office of Detention Oversight, that reports to the Homeland Security Committee of the U.S. Congress. We're inspected and accredited by the American Correctional Association. We're inspected and accredited by the National Commission on Correctional Health Care. Additionally, there are ICE officials that are assigned to our building for duty. There's an ICE official whose only full-time job is to watch our compliance with ICE standards. And that individual works for and responds to the ICE field office in Richmond. There's a second ICE official whose only full-time job is to watch our compliance with ICE policy. And he also watches the other ICE people that work at our facility. And he reports directly to ICE headquarters in Washington, D.C. Lastly, I believe that there are now up to 5 different hotlines that detainees can call free of charge 18 hours per day to report abuse, mistreatment, dissatisfaction with the facility, or any other allegation that they would like. One of those hotlines is to the Office of the Inspector General of the federal government. This year, I have not been made aware of or been asked to respond to a single complaint from any detainees from any of those hotlines. So if there is a lack of oversight in ICE detention facilities, or if there is mass concern on the part of detainees about how they're being taken care of, I would be shocked, number one, and number two, I can tell you it's not at my facility. But that is one of the messages that is continually pounded by people that oppose our existence, and it's just not true. This concludes my remarks. Pending your questions, I will be as transparent with you as I can, barring any restrictions that I have from contractual obligations or medical privacy information. I thank you for your time this evening.
Director, one question that has been reported repeatedly in the media in regards to testing, and that's the fact that I believe the governor or the National Guard was coming to administer tests, and the tests were quote-unquote canceled by Farmville.
I appreciate you bringing that up, Mr. Mayor. So what happened is, when we began to determine among the population that there was a potential spreading of infection, we were trying to find a source for mass testing. Rhonda Pruitt from the local health department, who our doctor, Dr. Moore, has worked with on virtually a daily basis since March, said to us that there would be an opportunity for the National Guard to come to our facility and test and do mass testing if we needed it. And Dr. Moore came to me and asked me if I'd be interested in that. And at the time, we had no source for mass testing, and I said, yes, absolutely. So she asked Rhonda to go ahead and get that in place. Now, I'm under the perception at the time that that meant that week, maybe next week. The response we received back from Rhonda Pruitt is, I'll put it on the calendar and they should be able to get there in 4 to 5 weeks. I said, I don't have 4 to 5 weeks. I need testing yesterday. And if it's 4 to 5 weeks from now, I'm not interested. At which time Rhonda suggested, well, let me leave it on the calendar, and if and when we arrive at that thing 4 to 5 weeks from now, I can cancel with as little as 2 days' notice. But if you still need them, let's have it available. I said, perfect, leave it on the calendar. In the meantime, we found a private lab through our medical provider, Armor, and we started conducting the mass testing of our detainees. By the time the offer for the National Guard came back around 4 to 5 weeks later, we had already completed testing of the entire detainee population and had started retesting. So when the call came back to me, do we need the National Guard? My response was, no, I don't need the National Guard. We've done all our testing. That message got passed back. We were then told that we had put a lot of pressure on the Department of Health to bring in the National Guard, to which my response was, I have no idea what you're talking about. This was an offer to us for assistance. We don't need the assistance anymore. I'm not sure why you would want to waste those resources at our facility when it's not needed. That somehow got spun and twisted and conveyed to the governor's office and many other people that we were somehow refusing assistance and didn't want the National Guard in our building. No idea where that came from. Last week, I had a call with David Martin from the Virginia Department of Health, who talked to me about having a call the next day with the Virginia Department of Health and the CDC to discuss testing. I said, David, we've already done all our testing, we don't need testing. He said, well, this is in regards to the staff. I said, well, that's the first time anyone's ever mentioned that to me. Be happy to have a phone call with you. And the next day, we had a phone call. So that is how the refusal of the National Guard took place. Not sure how it got spun, but that's all I can tell you.
Thank you, sir. The other question I have is the CDC, at least in the paper reports, the CDC is here, is visiting. How long, can you tell us how long they've been here, how long they plan to stay?
Sure
What
can.
do they report?
So that also originated last week. We had a call with the CDC. That developed as out of the request. I'm sure everybody knows Governor Northam wrote a letter to the president about how dire the circumstances were at our facility. I will say that no one from the governor's office bothered to call us and ask us what was happening in our facility. Neither did anyone else. The Virginia Department of Health and the CDC apparently had conversations about us for 2 to 3 weeks. And the first thing they said is, but we neglected to include you in those conversations. So there was a lot of organization to bring us relief that was well after the time we needed it. And I told them, you should have called us 2 months ago, we probably could have used your help back then. But the president, I'm assuming, or someone on his staff, asked the CDC to offer some assistance to the Virginia Department of Health. They asked me if I would be willing to accept that help, and I said, oh, sure, of course. I'm not sure what you're going to do. It's been 4 weeks since we've had anybody symptomatic here, but you're free to come down and look around if you'd like. So we have a team of 10 that showed up at the facility on Monday. They will be leaving the facility on Friday. They are not testing detainees. The only detainees they are interested in testing are the ones that have been in our custody that have tested negative all along, which as of today, there are 31 detainees who have never tested positive. The CDC is interested in retesting them again. The other thing the CDC is interested in is testing our staff and testing members of the Farmville community. And the reason that they're interested in that is they want to do genome sequencing of the virus, and they want to try and determine the strain that's in the facility, the strain that's been seen in the community. Is it the same? Did the facility bring it out to the community? Did the community take it into the facility? What happened? What's going on? And so that's the purpose of their visit. They're also assessing our response to how we managed the situation in the last few months, and apparently their report will be ready sometime towards the end of September.
Questions?
I've got some comments, questions. You know, internal, you talked about internal processes, but one thing that you failed to do is provide good communication to the community. You know, I run a retirement community. I have the population that's most vulnerable for this disease. And now you're telling me that this news came out and it happened 6 weeks ago. You realize that when we screen people, we ask them if they have anybody in their household or in contact with anyone that in a facility that has active COVID. You had active COVID. And believe it or not, asymptomatic can spread the virus. Just because they're asymptomatic, you can't pat yourself on the back. That's not something to pat yourself on the back about. But what I'm concerned about is that your lack of communication put this community and the vulnerable people in this community at risk with your employees, 28 of them, that have tested positive, that are coming back out into our community with no knowledge whatsoever from the community until it's almost an afterthought. You know, you need to do a better job, particularly as a subcontractor for this town, to have the best interests of the town and its community in mind when you make decisions. And this is not a decision that you made that is in our best interest. Could have strained our health care. You could have had the COVID in our long-term care facilities in this area. We could have had massive deaths because of it. And you're sitting here talking about everything that you've done and, oh, don't worry about it. It's a big deal.
Sir, I never insinuated that it wasn't a big deal. What I will say is that our staff were free to answer any screening questions that anybody would have ever asked them. We never gave any indication to our staff to deny when they're screened anywhere that they go about who they've been in contact with. Unfortunately, the federal government, as I said, restrains us.
Listen, I'm a contractor in the federal government too, and we are required to report if we have positive cases. So I doubt that you don't have that same responsibility.
Well, I will tell you this, every single case we had was reported to the Virginia Department of Health and the Prince Edward County Division. They've known about every case. Every test result was reported to them, even in the case of our staff. So the local officials in this county for the health department knew exactly what was happening in our institution. We did not keep it a secret. We complied with those reporting requirements.
Yeah, you're compliant, but you didn't communicate to the community. And that's what you need to do. You're part of this community. And you need to act like you're a part of the community and be responsible in that.
Believe me, I would have loved to.
You could have.
I have a question for you. As of today, you have 285 detainees. You talked about it's been 5 weeks since there have been any symptoms. So what's the total count today in terms of positive cases versus negative cases?
Appreciate you asking that question. On July 17th, the CDC issued new guidelines that advises that there be a movement away from testing. It is now a symptom-based strategy to clear people. The CDC guidance says that if it's been 10 days and the person has had improvement in symptoms and had no fever for the last 24 hours, they're to be considered clear of infection.
Okay.
So under what we have experienced, which is 5 weeks with no symptoms, my position is we have 0 cases in our facility right now.
And those, is that factoring in cases that have been previously tested positive?
Yes, ma'am. That factors in everything.
Because I agree with Greg. I did read a news story that says 30% of patients who were asymptomatic, they can carry COVID. So
Yes, the reason the CDC has changed their strategy is because a COVID-19 test can indicate that you're positive for up to 3 months. But what the medical science is telling them is that you will not have enough virus in your body to infect someone else or to actually make you sick, but it will still turn your test positive. We had 2 detainees in our facility in April that tested positive that were never symptomatic, and they tested positive for almost 10 weeks. We kept them in medical isolation. We never had, we conducted 37 other COVID tests among our population for detainees who were symptomatic, and every single one of those tests returned negative. So we successfully managed those 2 people and prevented them from making anyone else ill in our facility for 10 weeks. And many of you have seen that ICE transferred us some bodies on June 2nd. That is correct. We were assured before they came that these folks were healthy. In one instance, we were told that one of the facilities the detainees were coming from had no instances of COVID-19. In hindsight, we believe we discovered information that is not accurate, but that is what we were told at the time. So
that was going to be my next question. I know when the Department of Corrections stopped all movement of transportation of inmates when COVID hit. So did your facility stop movement immediately when all of this hit in March? And when did you resume transfer of inmates? Was this your first transfer of inmates?
I believe it was April 1st that there were 6 community cases in Farmville that were identified. We found that out through our frequent communication with the Department of Health. On that day, I advised ICE in writing that due to the situation cropping up in the local community, we recommended that they not transfer anyone to us or transfer anyone out of our facility without precautions. They denied that and continued to bring us people all the way through sometime in May. There was no transfers for probably 3 to 4 weeks. This transfer that took place on June 2nd was ordered by ICE headquarters. I do know that the local field office pushed back and attempted to refuse the transfer, and they were overridden by officials in Washington, which is how we received the transfer that we did.
I have one question.
On the transfers of the ones that you were told that were not positive, when you came to your facility, when did you find out they were positive?
Thank you for that question. What happened was we had enhanced screening measures since March. We had our first meeting on COVID-19 as a facility and what we were going to do on January 27th. So we already began to plan before the first case was seen in Virginia of what we were going to do because we knew it would be a matter of time. So we had enhanced screening procedures. When those individuals arrived on June 2nd, we did the pre-screening before they ever entered our facility. There were 2 individuals that had fevers and did not meet that pre-screening condition. They were both sent to Central Southside Hospital to be tested and evaluated, and then they were returned to the facility and they were put in medical isolation. We had 2 different groups in that arrival on June 2nd. They were from 2 different states. Because our population was so low, we put all of the detainees from one state in one dorm together, and all of the detainees from the other state in one dorm together, and we even kept them separate from each other and separate from the rest of the facility. And we waited on the results of the tests for the 2 that had gone to the hospital. In the meantime, there was 2 others in one of those dorms who presented with fever, and we tested them as well. We got all 4 test results the same day that indicated they were all positive. At that point, we made the decision based on that to test every one of those people that came from other states. And that was the first group that we started to do the testing on. In the meantime, those folks were quarantined, they were locked down, our staff were wearing full PPE as we went in and out of those housing units. They were isolated from everybody else. So we did all the precautions that the CDC recommended and all the things that we were supposed to do as we navigated through the process.
And my second part to that question is, once you found out they were positive, what did you do to the employees that transferred them to your facility? Did you send them home to get tested, or what happened to those group of employees? Or did they wait later on to get tested and when they came up with symptoms?
So in every one of these situations, our doctor always contacted Rhonda Pruitt and asked her what we should do for whoever was involved. And anybody that had known contact with positives was sent to a provider to get tested and then screened, or also told to self-monitor and report any symptoms to us. So we want to stay on track of all of that.
Any other questions? Any other questions? Thank you, sir. I appreciate your coming. We as a town would certainly like to see the report from the CDC that's public, made available to the town. We would certainly like to see that.
To the public, I'm sorry.
Sorry.
To the public.
Be hours late for us. If we would love to see the report that the CDC produces, the town would, if you could make that available to us when it becomes available. You said late September.
I certainly can, sir. We've been advised that we will receive a copy of it, and so we'd be happy to share it with you.
You don't anticipate any transfers in anytime soon?
No, there's a moratorium on ICE transfers. The fallout for ICE as a agency because of the June 2nd transfer to us in particular has caused them great consternation, as it should. And to my knowledge, they are not transferring any detainees anywhere in the country. They still are removing aliens from the country, depending on the country where those aliens come from and what those countries' policies are. But that's the only movement that's taking place of ICE detainees to my knowledge.
No other questions? We appreciate you being here. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your time. And we'll see what the future holds.
Thanks for the opportunity. Appreciate it.
Okay. Madam Clerk, do we have anyone else signed up to speak under the general public?
Yes, we have Ms. Faye Green,
I pass on that. Same time.
Next, we have Jake Romaine and Nash Osmond from North Street Press Club.
Gentlemen, welcome. Welcome.
That was heavy, so heavy follow.
We're really here to address some potential shutdown or curfew things. We've noticed around the country and around the state that in some localities, especially in college towns, there have been some instances of curfews for bars and restaurants and for college students, I guess, in general. And we just kind of wanted to give our input, being essentially the only place that operates after 11 o'clock or midnight here, and just kind of wanted to share with you guys our feelings on how this could affect us. We've already had to go through quite a bit, as everybody has. I'm not saying that we're special in this instance, but our revenue's taken a great hit since we opened for all of our locations, not just here, not just at the Press Club, but we're doing our best for the community. We've tried to stay open. We've tried to serve the community the best we can, and if this curfew was to go into place, or you guys were to vote for it, it would really give us another knock to our revenue stream. So just please consider that when you guys are talking about it. I know that it's we're dealing with an influx of students very soon. I know that we all have to be cognizant of what that means for the community. We are aware of it. We are doing our best to curtail some of that stuff before it happens. I sent an email today to Chief Ellington outlining sort of our plans. We're going to continue to operate the way we've been operating. We've been using our social distancing guidelines. We also are requiring people that are there to be seated and not to be congregating in big groups. And we will plan to continue to do the same thing as the students and parents come back to town. So again, we just wanted to reach out to you guys and kind of give our plea not to shut us down early, because we need that revenue. And as I was doing some figures today, it's about $10,000 a week that we would lose in revenues just for our one establishment. So that, 40 grand a month, I know that the town depends on the meals taxes greatly, and that also pulls money out of that as well. So thank you all for hearing me, us. I think I speak for Jake.
Nash, what time do you all close?
Well, we do last call at 1:30 on Thursday, Friday, and Saturday, which are obviously our nights that we generate the most revenue from our later crowd. And we close at 2 a.m. shutdown.
What type of things are you talking about doing, Nash?
So, like I said, we're following all the VDH guidelines as it goes. Masks for servers, front of the house staff. We are also we have our tables are fairly socially distanced as it is because of how large the building is. But we're also, like I said, we're making sure that people are actually seated outside and they're not congregating. There are no bar stools, so we're not able to do bar service, quote unquote.
Right.
So, and again, we're visited and called by the health inspector all the time, and we're in constant communication with them to follow the guidelines as best as we can.
One of the things that I think that we've not had a discussion is later in the evening. You're welcome to stay. But under the current executive order of the governor, crowds of up to 250 can gather, and that's, I think, the main point that many of the towns and the other mayors that I've spoken to, that's a huge issue to have 250 people congregating. So many of them have lowered that number to like 50. But they have excluded restaurants and churches, and there's a number of exclusions that are already in there. And there's no intent to hurt anyone, so it's a matter of health.
Yeah, I think that one of the things is that we eventually, hopefully, not hopefully, we will come out on the other side of this, and we don't want to be collateral damage in that, and so, like I said, we've taken a big hit in revenues, obviously, just throughout this whole ordeal, and so we just don't want to see them dwindling even further.
Thank you. Any other questions?
Have you finished serving meals as far as food?
We've served up until 1:30.
Okay.
Yeah. So.
When you came up with the estimate of $10,000 per week, what was the closing time based on when you did?
We did from 12 to 2, so essentially losing 2 hours of late night revenue.
Okay, any other questions? Thank you, gentlemen.
Thanks.
Madam Clerk, any other speakers?
No, sir.
Anyone wish to speak that didn't sign up? Yes, sir.
Thank you very much. Adam Yolen, 600 Hyde Street. Councilmember Cole brings up an interesting point. There is a bit of a discrepancy between the McCormick-Taylor and the Virginia Department of Transportation. It surprised me when I heard number 2 in safety back when this first started. Everything I'd ever read or understood about that, roundabouts are safe.
Can I make one suggestion? I mean, it's up to you as a chair, but the public hearing for the roundabout's been closed. This is for other matters other than those two. Nothing against Mr. Yolward,
I
just the
understand.
rules, that's up to the mayor.
Yeah. Anything else you'd like to say? I've always been lenient to let people have their say.
Okay?
So if you can quickly, in 30 seconds, finish your thought.
Sure. It seems to me that this question needs a resolution, and I would respectfully suggest that if we're going to push the decision on the green T back to the September, and that we can still meet the necessary deadlines, why not get the resolution, why not get the answer we need here? And do the same thing with the roundabout. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, we'll move to the regular order of business. Request approval for the consent agenda. Does anybody have anything they wish to pull from the consent agenda? If not, do I hear a motion that we approve the consent agenda?
May I make a motion to adopt the consent agenda as presented?
Second. Motion and second. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Ayes have it. Madam Treasurer, Treasurer's report, please.
Good evening. You have July's treasurer's report before you. You will see under the restricted funds, the general fund shows a negative amount. Last month, I did explain that depending on how the July revenues looked, as well as the expenses for the VDOT Millwood and Maine grant, we may need to transfer the $500,000 from the set-aside account back to the general fund. And also perhaps not to transfer the monthly $150,000 from the general fund to set aside. Once we get our funds from VDOT, and we do not have, and hopefully no other setbacks, general fund should be able to pay back the set aside the $500,000. Later during the meeting, there is an agenda item regarding this. Do you have any questions?
Any questions? Do I hear a motion to approve the treasurer's report?
Make a motion to approve the treasurer's report. Second.
Motion and second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Ayes have it. Item 11, discuss suspension of convenience fees, the waiver of penalties and interest, suspension of disconnection of water and parking meters. Mr. Davis?
We were to bring this back to you in July, which we did, and it was extended another 30 days until this meeting. So I'm just trying to get council's feedback on how you want to continue or not on the waiver of these fees and penalties and interest, and parking meters that are on Main Street and some of the other areas in downtown, as far as the free parking. Also, the disconnection of water. KYN does have some of the numbers if you're interested. We have some 3, 4, 5, and 6 months at this point. I think we're getting to a point where some of them are getting past their time that it's going to be able for them to pay back. We have tried to call. Some do not have good numbers any longer. We've posted notices on their door. Some have come in and set up payment plans, as we have tried to do. Some of those individuals, though, are repeat offenders when it's under normal times, if you will. So I think we're at a point where we need to look at where we start cutting this back, or we may not get, and we've even shared in those letters that there's funding opportunities if they have needs from social services and steps where CARES Act funds are available to where they can't make their payments and things like that. So anything that I've left out, Carolyn, that you can think of? Any questions about that?
Any questions? I'll make a comment. I think it's time for us to get back to business as usual. It's my personal feelings. I'd like to see these restrictions lifted and we continue on forward. We don't know how long this is going to last. It's an open book that nobody knows the end to, unfortunately. I think we need to start moving forward in the right direction for the town. What's the pleasure? I'd like to make a motion that we rescind all the provisions that we've made for COVID-19 and go back to our standard policies, uncover our parking meters, and try to get life back to normal as much as possible.
Is there a second? No second. Okay, motion dies. So what does council wish to do? You wish to take any action or continue?
Mayor, I make a recommendation, we send it back to the committees that brought it forth to begin with, so we can discuss how we can move out of this in a sensible manner.
That would be the finance committee. So you'll put that in form of a motion?
Yes, sir.
Okay. I'd like to make a comment to that motion. I, as a merchant on Main Street, have seen total abuse of the parking meter situation. It is ridiculous that employees of merchants on Main Street are parking on Main Street every single day on a regular basis. And I'd like to at least see them meters uncovered.
I'll go along with that.
You make that a part of your motion?
Yeah, I'll make the part of the motion to send everything to the finance committee except for the parking meters that can be uncovered immediately.
Second. Motion is second. Any additional discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Ayes have it. Item 12, discussion of suspension of delinquent accounts receivable notices.
Do you wish to send that back to the committee as well? And just so I'm under the right, by sending it back to the committee on the last one, the committee meets at the end of this month, so we'll continue this until potentially the next regular meeting, in essence. The same
The
policy.
committee will need to bring recommendations back to council.
Unless the chairman calls a special meeting.
Well, you still can't be in action without council, so we're still looking at a month, next September's meeting.
So we're going to do the same thing with the delinquent accounts receivable. Correct?
Yes.
Yes.
I make a motion, we refer this to the finance committee meeting for the next meeting for discussion needs out of it as well.
Is there a second? Second. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed?
No.
Okay. One no. All right, item 13, discuss parking rental fees.
Currently, we're waiving those that rent parking spaces from us. We did it across the board. We had one business ask, and the decision was that anybody that was going to, if we did it for one, we would do it for all of them. So currently, the rental that we get for parking spaces, we're not getting that revenue as well. And people are out. That was during the takeout time period, and when they were limited. So some of these are anywhere from 3rd Street Brewing to ones that rent parking spaces off of 2nd Street in that parking lot for housing, the university, all of those are under that.
And all these are open back up.
Correct.
I make a motion that we put the fees back into place.
Second.
Motion and second to reinstitute the parking rental fees as of when?
When you want to start with?
Did you start on first? Or
Yeah, we do it by a monthly basis, so we could.
September 1?
It reinstitute on September 1. So part of your motion?
Yes.
Second?
Second.
All in favor? Any opposed? Ayes have it. Oh, really? Item 14 is the adoption of resolution number 2020-0801, which is the Griffin Boulevard project, and I think we've already agreed to delay that. I need a motion to delay that and also to ascertain the information from Moden.
I'll make a motion that we delay this process until we have more information.
Second.
Motion and second. Any additional discussion? If not, all in favor? Any opposed? Ayes have it. Item 15 is the adoption of resolution 2020-0802, which is the roundabout. I know that Mr. Gillen had suggested delaying that one as well, but what are the deadlines for filing?
The applications, we have to have both applications in by August 17th, which is Monday. But you can end up putting the, and that's what I need feedback on the other matter is, yes, the resolution doesn't have to be in till later on, until October, but the application actually has to be submitted next Monday.
Why are you doing?
Yeah, I don't understand why we're delaying this either.
Just go forward with this?
I mean, in my mind, I look at these projects and I look at it as an opportunity for infrastructure improvements to the town that are, I think, with an eye towards the future. We're looking at 10 years down the road potentially, and I like the way that future looks 10 years down the road. And so, if we're discussing safety, there are so many components to safety in an intersection. And I think if all of the engineers and the experts and the folks who get paid money to study these things indicate that this is a safe solution, I don't see any problem with moving forward on it, and would make the motion that we adopt the resolution authorizing the support and submission of funding application for the roundabout project.
That a motion?
Yes, sir.
Do I hear a second? Motion and second. Any additional discussion? Madam Clerk, call the roll.
Mr. Cole?
No.
Mr. Hunter?
No.
Mr. Benson?
Yes.
Mr. Parrott?
Yes.
Mr. Dwyer?
Yes.
Mr. Reed?
No.
And Ms. Ames?
Yes.
It's at 43. Yeah, it's late. I can't count it. Okay. 43, the motion passes. Item 16, request authorization to promote dispatcher from training to communications operator 1. Mr. Davis?
Falling down my other job today. Yes, Jackie Gilbert has a trainee who has completed all of their requirements to become a Communicator 1, which is the next step for that employee after their probation and meeting all the training requirements. So I'm asking that council allow that employee to move to that position at $15.20 an hour. I'd also ask that, based on our retreat and based on conversations, if council will also in this motion allow me as the manager to not have to bring changes in jobs like this if it's been allocated and it's an open position that has been approved in the budget, that I can make those changes within that scale. As I said before, each year you're going to approve all the positions that we have, as you did this year in the budget, and the pay ranges, and actually in the budget what that salary will be. And I can only fill that with positions that are open and that the town can afford in that adopted budget. Anything other than that, obviously I would have to come to you because that's a change in that budget document. And so I would just request that since prior, a few years ago, it was made, I believe in a motion that the manager would have to bring it, that it be resolved at this meeting that the manager does not have to do that for this type of movement.
Let's handle it as two issues. First, let's talk about the request for the dispatcher trainee. Do I hear a motion to grant them?
So moved.
Second. Motion and second to grant the pay increase for the trainee. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Ayes have it. And Mr. Davis is correct. You all recall several years ago, everything had to come before council. I now think, based on the discussion at the retreat, as long as it's in the budget, the manager has the authority to move forward. And I need a motion to that.
Okay, motion to that effect.
Second. Motion and second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Ayes have it.
Thank you all very much.
Here we go. Request authorization to write off remaining accounts receivable balance for car contracting company. Madam Treasurer.
Yes, sir. You will remember, we had an agreement finally with Car Contracting, and he did some, it was cost plus for putting in a water tap out here at the hotel, and he didn't pay. Well, Gary worked with him and said that if he would make 6 payments of the $870.16, pay on time, which he was a month early in paying, we would forgo any of the penalties and interest that had occurred. So he did keep his promise on the promissory note. So now I'm asking you to write off the remaining per the promissory note agreement.
What's the pleasure of council?
Mr. Mayor, I make a motion to authorize the town treasurer to write off the remaining accounts receivable for a car contracting company in the amount of $1,751.01.
Second.
Motion and second. Any additional discussion? All in favor? My apologies. It's money. Madam Clerk?
Mr. Hunter?
Yes.
Mr. Benson?
Yes.
Mr. Parrott?
Yes.
Mr. Dwyer?
Yes.
Mr. Reed?
Yes.
And Ms. Ames?
Yes.
And Mr. Cole?
Yes.
Thank you, ma'am. Request authorization for the town manager to sign a letter of support for the county waste. Mr. Davis, you want to explain that?
Sure. If you'll remember, back in March, yeah, I'm trying to find my note there. Back in March, a representative from County Waste, who is doing the facility in Cumberland County, which is called Green Ridge Recycling and Disposable Facility, came and spoke with you all. Part of the DEQ requirements is that they try to get localities support in either that it's a good idea for competition and those types of things to be in existence, and or to reserve capacity in the landfill. Most of the places will do both. We had other letters that he provided us. The infrastructure committee has met And they approved for me to draft this letter and approve this letter and are bringing it to council for me to sign on the town's behalf. And what this says is that we're currently taking our solid waste to the Prince Edward County landfill. If at some point in time where that capacity is full and we look for somewhere else, that we will do that. At that facility, we reserve the right to have a capacity there. And actually, as you remember, Prince Edward County has done this as well. If they were to close their landfill or have capacity full, they've reserved capacity at this disposal center.
I make a motion to accept the recommendation of the infrastructure and authorize the town manager to sign a letter of support for the Green Bridge Recycling Disposal Facility.
Second. Motion is second. Any additional discussion? If not, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Ayes have it. Motion carries. Item number 19, discussion of CARES Act funding. Mr. Davis?
Yes, I'm gonna start it off, and then I'm gonna pass it on to Chief Ellington and also Mr. Hunter, who is obviously the town's representative on behalf of council and us on the CARES committee. If you'll remember, the way it is working, that the federal money is going to the state, and then the state distributes it to cities and counties, but not towns. So towns get allocation of funds based on the county in which they are in. Prince Edward County was gracious enough to include us, obviously, on the CARES committee, along with their IDA and some other community members. And so Mr. Hunter is a representative on that committee. It is then taken to the full board of supervisors for any of that money to be expended for items that are approved. The chief is going to talk about an item that we've looked at and want and need in general, but because of COVID, it would be a greater asset now, and that is modal data terminals, and I'll let him speak to that in just a moment. I want to brief you on two other items before that, because you know the chief likes to talk, so I'm gonna hold on. I'm gonna get my points in first and ask him to be short-winded tonight. But YMCA and the county and the town are looking to collaborate, and actually Mr. Hunter and Brad Watson, who is chair of the IDA committee, it's my understanding, had this conversation and brought it back, and I was asked to be involved from the town perspective to work with the YMCA. There is the possibility of needing of child care as public schools, private schools go virtual, and so those in the county that may not be able or have the opportunity to have different care, it's looking at the Y. That's a program that they could help in, and so the Y just needs space. They would handle the program as far as the licensing. And one of our locations that we have that could help that is the sports arena. And currently we're not renting the facility. And with the CARES funding, anything that needs to be done to make it accessible and those types of things, like data. If the kids are going to school virtually, we're going to have to increase our data capabilities. The county, the funding from the CARES money that the county can give to the town in order to increase our payment, that our bill will increase for data. And so I just want to let you know it hasn't come to a full agreement on how many kids or how that will work quite yet, but we are in the process of looking at how licensing capabilities from the Y, how many we can fit in the sports arena. I want the council to be aware that there is some collaboration occurring, and hopefully we'll be able to help the community as a whole, the county, the Y, and the town in that respect. One item that did get turned down, and I think this might have been a meeting Mr. Hunter was not able to attend. I'm not going to blame him for that, though. You'll remember Chief Ellington and I decided when this pandemic originated that we went with a company to give us 3 days a week of deep cleaning, and high touch points, all those types of things. That was within our community that had a solvent that would a high percentage of obviously killing the virus. And we did that until the end of, I want to say, May timeframe, almost June. And we submitted that as part of our COVID-related expenses to the CARES Committee. There's different things that we've already done for the prior year with the first round of money. And unfortunately, the committee deemed that as not to refund us for that, in that we had staff that could clean, and that was an expense that did not need to be spent. And so just to let you know that we'll be having to either cover that from last budget year ourselves, or go through the arduous process of FEMA, which might not be worth trying to get $5,000 and some back for through that process. It's a little bit more detailed than using CARES money in that method. That's all that I have for right now.
But as a suggestion,
Yes.
I know I did not make that meeting, you are correct. But as a suggestion, they are approving for equipment. So I suggest we put in for the equipment and the cleaner solution. And I don't know what certification you have to use it, but I'm pretty sure you'll find that out.
Yeah, there's foggers that we didn't use the fogger with this company. It was a spray. You leave it on and then come back and wipe it off. The fogger they would have to do when no one's in the building, because you can't be in the building when it's done. So yes, we are looking into that and being able to do that ourselves in the future. Chief?
I know it's been a long night, but I will try to be as brief as I can. Just to give you an update on the CARES Act, several weeks ago received an email from the county asking myself and the sheriff to come up with a list of the needs, primarily PPE supplies that we need to make it through this pandemic. In doing so, we came up with a list from each department. The numbers were way off, and in the meantime, the county has received another grant through fire services that will more than is enough to cover PPE supplies for law enforcement, fire rescue, etc. So when I got informed this last week, I was speaking to Sarah, who's handling this for the county. She invited me to come over with the sheriff and sit down and kind of brainstorm what we need equipment-wise within our agencies that we could use this money for. So I went over and met with the three of them, and right off the bat, I was trying to think outside the box on equipment that we need that we can associate with the COVID virus, and also that we could use down the road. First thing I thought of and threw out there were radios, because you know I've been trying to acquire radios for some time now. And we decided that there was no way we could relate that to COVID. Another thing that I threw out just real quick before I get to the mobile data terminals, Mr. Hunter mentioned the need for some signs, display signs along the highways, the big digital signs, that we could advertise different things about COVID, what's going on, mask up, what have you. So decided to put in for 4 of them, and as well as gas masks. We decided that we needed to update our gas masks for all of our police officers, and all of the deputy sheriffs in the county, and for a number of reasons, going into places that may have high COVID rates, hot spots where the officers actually have better protection than the masks that we're wearing tonight. They've got filters on them. In case we ever had civil unrest happen here in town and gas being deployed, smoke was being deployed, what have you, these officers need these masks for their own protection. So we put in for 50 of them. Then it came up the possibility of MDTs. MDTs are mobile data terminals. They go inside the police vehicles. They virtually turn the police car into the officer's office. The car becomes an office on wheels. They can do all of their reports, all the dispatch, the calls for service, instead of being put out over the air. As soon as dispatch starts keying in the call for service, it goes to the call. Our primary concern with the officers since the COVID virus hit is keeping them separated, keeping them out of harm's way and exposure to the public, minimizing it as much as we can. So we did some research, and it turns out that we feel that we can actually use this money for this purchase because it is reducing the exposure of the officers with the virus. Not only is it an additional branch to our CAD system that we upgraded in dispatch, but it's also a capital expense that I had already put into the budget that we would start this year and go over the next 5 years to get this process implemented, because it comes with a hefty price tag. Of course, when COVID hit, all capital expenditures were taken away, frozen. So with that said, the sheriff and I decided that we were going to put this in to our request was to put the MDTs in all the officers' police cars as well as the deputies' cars to reduce their exposure and keep them out on the street. I can go at length numbers of things that these MDTs do additionally, but I know time is of essence tonight. So anyway, we went to the committee last week. Mr. Hunt was there. We presented these 3 purchases to the committee. The committee had no problem with them, even boosted the amount of signage to 6 signs, and also recommended the purchase of all of these MDTs for the vehicles, the cars. I went to the board meeting last night where the committee presented their proposal and the board voted unanimously for all these purchases. I'm talking $175,000 just for the MDTs alone, not including the signs or the facings. So with that said, we're well over $200,000. There was only one stipulation that was put on it on approval last night. And all this COVID money at some point is subject to be audited. So the board was concerned that if they approved this amount of money for the town, and later down the road, there was an audit, and it was deemed that this money was not COVID related, the county's responsible to pay it all back. So they're requesting that the town council sign an agreement that should this ever happen, that you will cover the expense of just the MDT, which again is going to be somewhere around $175,000. But keep in mind, this is an expense that I've already looked at budgeting for over the next 5 years that will save us that amount of money, taxpayers that amount of money to pay for it with this CARES Act.
And I'll say this, I talked to Mr. Bartlett this afternoon, and the agreement he assured me is not just, they're asking everybody to do it, actually. Nonprofits, everyone, that if something were to occur, that under auditing purposes by the federal government with this fund, with these funds, that it wasn't usable in the way that we did, that they would reimburse the county for that. So based on, I think everybody agrees that has had any part in this or heard this part of it and read the CARES. I don't have any reservation about the use of those and what they can be, how beneficial they can be from having to come into the station every time to type a report, and they're in their vehicles, the information that they can get from those as far as running people's information, a lot of things that it can do to keep them within their own office, if you will, during their shift. So I think it does have a benefit. It has a significant benefit.
Any questions, council? Anybody have any questions? Let's move forward with it. Yeah, I make a motion to sign this agreement and accept the $175,000 by the MTVs, whatever they are.
Second.
There we go.
Motion and second. Any other discussion, Madam Clerk?
You'll clean that up for me, Jackie, won't you?
Mr. Benson?
Yes.
Mr. Parrott?
Yes.
Mr. Dwyer?
Yes.
Mr. Reed?
Yes.
Ms. Amos?
Yes.
Mr. Cole?
Yes.
And Mr. Hunter?
Yes. I just have one thing to add to that. The county did receive 1.9 million at first, and they received another 1.9 million. So that allowed the departments to be able to chime in on what they need.
Anything else, Chief?
Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Next item, adoption of resolution 2020-0803, which is the transfer of funds that the clerk spoke about earlier. It's in your packet. Do I hear a motion?
I make a motion to adopt resolution 2020-8-3, authorizing town treasurer to transfer $500,000 from the set-aside account to the general fund, and authorize the town treasurer to defer transferring $150,000 from the general fund to the set-aside account for the month of August.
Second.
Motion second. Any discussion? Madam Clerk, call the roll, please.
Mr. Parrott?
Yes.
Mr. Dwyer?
Yes.
Mr. Reed?
Yes.
Ms. Amos?
Yes.
Mr. Cole?
Yes.
Mr. Hunter?
Yes.
Mr. Benson?
Yes.
Thank you, ma'am. In the essence of time, I'm going to come back to 21, and we'll see if we can finish up the rest of this, because 21 will take some discussion. Standing committees, do we have anybody that has a report from their committee? I'm not going around the table tonight.
Just one from the rescue squad. They also were awarded from the same CARES Act up to $300,000 to get another ambulance.
Wonderful. Anybody else on my left have anything from their committees? Anything, anybody committee reports? Okay. That takes care of standing committees. Mr. Davis, can you do staff report pretty quickly?
Sure. Potential new restaurant in the form of El Patron coming. Mr. Reed had asked about looking at a crosswalk light at Burrow and Griffin Boulevard, right there at the Moton. That is solar, similar to the one on Main Street, solar push button detector, motion detector and push button. It'll cost around $16,000 to put 2 of those up, and it's 6 to 8 weeks to get that. VRS update, all information has been sent, the actuarial study is being conducted, and I had the opportunity yesterday to meet with the new Reverend Sneed of Beulah AME Baptist, AME Church, I'm sorry, and great conversation, and look forward to him being part of our community.
Anything else?
Is it?
That's it. Let's go around the table real quick. Mr. Cole, you have anything? Mr. Hunter? Mr. Benson? Okay. Dwyer?
Yeah, I just want to make sure, the program, the smart scale program at Griffin, the conversation with Ricky Underwood, he said he would have a conversation with the Williams in. That's all I was concerned about. And he said he would, but now we have,
We still gonna have a conversation.
We haven't approved that one. Y'all tabled that.
I'm fine, okay, I'm fine with that.
Yeah,
that we tabled that.
I thought they were together.
No,
They're not.
y'all, the only one that was
We
on the table
Okay.
was the roundabout. You tabled the other one. But the problem is, that's the question I have. Are we gonna put in the application? Because the application's due Monday.
That's what I was asking, since.
Yeah.
I see no reason not to. I mean, we can always take it back if it doesn't suit us.
Yeah, I'm just saying you just need to have that conversation.
Right, yeah.
We did not adopt the resolution, and the resolution has to be a part of it, but it can be
Correct.
sent in October. So
It has
go
to
ahead
be
and
in
send the
my-
application, and then if we don't like it, we don't adopt the resolution, and that ends.
And I don't mind also sitting down with Mr. Reed on that topic and looking at what he's talking about in the 10 feet and where that would encroach.
Right, and that's all, I'm just saying you just need to have a conversation.
Okay, anybody else have any comments? Chief?
Just one thing, can we get something out to the businesses on Main Street about taking the bags up? I've got them taking them up as we speak. I think we need to put something out.
Yes, I think you definitely need to know.
Yeah, I don't know that we'll get it out this evening, but we'll get it out in the morning.
I'm sure Ashley would be happy to put something out in the morning, right, Ashley? Good deal. Robin?
Everything's good.
That's good. Okay, let's go back up to 21. I know we have a closed session. Let's go back up to 21, which is more a discussion. As all of you know, around the state, many towns our size are adopting additional emergency ordinances with college students returning. Under the current executive order, they can gather up to 250 folks can gather, and that causes a great deal of consternation among a lot of us if you put that many people together. So the town attorney and the town manager have looked at ordinances, I know, from Radford and Blacksburg and probably other towns. And so Gary, if you'd like to come and talk about the temporary ordinances, and I think we have copies. Everybody have copies?
Yes. Can I just say, I want to let Gary know, I mean, in my experiences, putting together something within the same day is not usual to occur. So thanks to Gary for doing this today. But I also would caution the council to adopt it tonight. Offer suggestions, I hope, so that we do have next week that we could adopt it, that we have the language that you truly want and not have making changes and it's not in written form.
So you're suggesting we just discuss it, make changes, and then adopt it when we meet next week?
Correct.
Okay.
Okay. Well, what you have in front of you, Scott, is correct. I put together today, and because I was operating on short notice, to be quite frank, what I did is basically borrow language from other communities of the state who have similar situations.
Called copy and paste, right?
Copy and paste. Radford and Blacksburg were the two that I borrowed from. I guess the primary concern that I had when I started looking at this is, do we actually have the authority to do this? I think we do. Our town code isn't as specific as some other town codes, namely Radford. Radford actually has a provision that calls for the adoption of emergency ordinances. We don't have that. But I think between our town code and the state code, I still think we can do this. I don't know if you all have any specific questions, and quite frankly, when I drafted this, I didn't know what you were looking for. So
let's start at the beginning. I've been asked several questions. Most of them have adopted this code for like 60 days, but it's my understanding on an emergency code, you can do it for 60 days. Then during that time period, you have to have a public hearing and then adopt it as we would regular ordinances. Are you familiar with that code section?
I'm not. I don't believe that's in our town code, and I haven't seen it in the state code.
I was told it was the state code, so I'll try to get you a reference to the state code.
Yeah, that would be good. I didn't see that provision.
One of the biggest thing I think was the gathering of 250 people. Where is that? That is section 4.
Section 4 in what I prepared, and this was borrowing again from Radford's emergency ordinance that they created, prohibits gatherings of more than 50 persons.
But it has some exclusions.
Correct.
Which are religious gatherings, funerals, weddings.
Wedding receptions, protests, or any activities on public streets or sidewalks, or any activities for which a special permit has been granted by the town manager. There was discussion earlier, I know that there were individuals here who were affiliated with a restaurant. There is no specific exclusion for restaurants in what I drafted. However, I do not believe that this would apply to restaurants.
Yeah, that was my understanding, is it did not apply to restaurants.
I do not think it would. I think that's covered by the state. My position would be we probably should wade into that.
Right. That's, in my conversation with the mayor of one of those towns, He said that they did not apply to restaurants,
Right.
and I'm assuming ours would be the same.
There is no, some of the communities had for instance, to close at midnight. I've looked through this, I didn't see any.
Blacksburg's did have restaurants, and it did have a closing time earlier, but Radford's did not have
Radford did
restaurants.
not.
That's not in this document, correct?
That is not in this document, and I didn't put it in there because, again, I didn't put anything that would dictate how we should force restaurants to operate.
In my conversation with several of you all, the concern is large student gatherings off campus, and there's really no teeth. This actually puts some teeth into that. Chief, you and I had that conversation. You want to weigh in on your thoughts on this?
It's like the noise ordinance. Right now, the state, we don't have any official capacity to enforce the groups, large numbers. And I know that's what's going to happen next week when college comes back. It'll be porch parties, yard parties, house parties. Our friends will be bringing off the hook. This would allow us to have enforcement.
Yeah, and this actually has, in the body of this emergency ordinance, there's not only some enforcement power, that is through civil fines, but there is also the ability of the town to actually enjoin the congregating of large groups. That would be essentially, we would ask the circuit court judge if it became a problem, to basically prohibit that type of conduct. And then that would only come into play, I think, if you had repeat offenders, and if they simply refused to stop congregating in large groups. Then once the circuit court took that action, law enforcement would then have the ability to probably take more stringent action. There could be show causes issued by the court, that sort of thing. I think this has got sufficient teeth to dissuade any type of large gatherings.
I know you're just getting it this evening, obviously, it came up today. And Gary, are you comfortable if they share with you and I by Friday, that they have a little bit more time, that we could still get something by Wednesday that could be approved emergency-wise?
If you all could get me comments, I could give you something to review at the next gathering of council that you can vote upon, yes.
Questions now? Do you all have?
Carrie, I have a question for you. You know, it says gatherings of more than 50. I'm thinking, that's tax size. What about gatherings of 15 or 20?
Well, that's up to council.
And if you're looking at town of Farmville, I'm thinking of riding up Oak Street and looking at some of the houses there and seeing just only like 10 and 15 kids congregated.
The only thing I'll tell council is you can't make a law just about college students. So when you reduce it beyond 50, you're talking about every single individual that has a gathering, not just college students. And I'm not saying anything
50 is a
for you.
lot, though. 50 is a lot.
But the state right now, you can have up to 250 people as long as you're social distance.
How are we feeling about the Section 6 enforcement of civil penalty on the face coverings? I'm not aware of it.
Yeah, I haven't read it.
Yeah, so basically what's in here, and this was not included in the Radford statute. It was found in the Radford ordinance, but it was included in Blacksburg's, that they had a face covering requirement. Now, the Department of Health actually already has that requirement in place. I will say, and I represent a lot of small businesses who inquire as to how they are to comply with that requirement. Frankly, the Department of Health doesn't seem to be policing it.
Well, and I'll speak, being somebody who enforces it in our business, we do enforce it for everybody coming in there. And what I would say is when I think about gatherings, if there's teeth to that section, you're going to deter large gatherings as it is, because people are, anytime something is inconvenient, we tend to see that people will just avoid the situation altogether, right? And I know for me personally, this idea of face coverings has gotten quite political, and in my mind it's a little absurd. that we're injecting politics into the situation, but at least what I've told people who have raised consternation about it with me is it at least raises the specter of what is happening so that you are constantly cognizant that something is going on and we are all then forced to recognize, create distance, and those things. And so when I think about that aspect of it, if that part is included, I think it takes care of some of that gathering issue. Because people are less inclined to, if there's some teeth there, they're less inclined to mask up and march.
I think I agree with that.
Other questions or concerns? This time.
If you all want to review it, I know Noah's probably had ample time to do so, and maybe through Scott, get back to me with proposed changes, whatever you
I
want.
have one question. I said 90 days, but is there something in the statute that says you can't go past 60 in an emergency?
That's what we need to check. That's what I was told, and so that's,
I
we
couldn't
need to
find
check
that
the code on
in
that.
statute.
I'll be honest, I combed through the Virginia code last night. I did not see that, and I was specifically looking for that type of section. I've never had any reason to look for it.
Because I read some town ordinance went 90 days.
Well, the ones I saw for Radford and Blacksburg, I believe both went 30. I put in 60, and I put that in primarily because I think I remember at the last meeting, Mr. Cole bringing up that he would like to see it extended a little longer. And so just having heard that, I went with 60. I didn't see.
You would like to, are you proposing 90?
I proposed 90.
Okay, why don't, I'll see if.
I'll get you that code section. It was another government official that told me that, so I'll see if she can provide the code section.
Sure. I'm glad to go the maximum amount that the code section would allow, if that's what the council wants to do.
Any other questions? We'll get our comments together and hope that we can adopt something when we meet next Wednesday.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Gary.
Okay, any other comments before we go into closed session? Who has the closed session notice?
Mr. Mayor, I move that the Farmville Town Council convene in closed meeting pursuant to the Code of Virginia in accordance with the provisions of paragraph A1 of section 2.2-3711 for discussion of prospective candidates for the clerk of council position.
Motion is second. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Ayes have it. We'll take a brief recess and then go into closed session.
All of your help the other day. You're welcome. And now you get to see it. I know, it's amazing. Hi, sweetie.
See you later. I'm gone.
Yeah, we gotta go.
You know what, I think that's what Beth got from you. Didn't she bring this back? No, she got it from me. Is it yours? Yeah, she got it from me. Okay, so she brought it back, because what you gave her to, load something. Yeah, actually, I don't think that's not. NCSJ? Let's see what's on it. I bet you it's NCSJ thing. I know, but that doesn't look like one of my flash drives. Is it one of yours? No. Questions and needs and VEC separation report.
I gotta be at work, but.
Maybe it's something Audrey gave her? I have no idea. I don't know. All right, well, thank you.
How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. What time did we start in today? What was our first time?
I think for y'all, it's 9:15. We have a candidate coming at 8:30 for the assessment.
But 9:30.
9:15.
9:15.
And we're doing that in the conference room there next to, okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
I was just making sure.
Okay.
All right. See you later. Yep.
Yeah, I'll keep you copy. Yep.
See ya.
See ya.
I've had a couple instances. See you, Bill. Food finding machine. I'll tell you what, man, if you ever decide to retire from work for me, I'll have you find code sections. You're as good as anybody I've ever seen at finding them. See you. Thank you.
I want to introduce myself. I'm Margaret Schmidt.
Hey, Margaret.
Parking group, I'm doing the HR.
Oh, good, I'm Gary Elder. I'm the attorney for the town. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
Yes, ma'am. I can be with assistance you got.
I'm sure we will be giving you a call.
Okay, all right.
Oh, they're talking, okay. Yeah, they can go that way.
Yeah, I think everything looked, that one looked like it was locked.
Oh.
Set off alarm.
Good that you'll be back here.
No, I guess,
I can sit right here. Yeah.
I said it was gonna be 10 o'clock.
That's what Dan said, so until the next week. So it is.
What up, Brian?
Okay.
Be careful.
Whereas the Farmville Town Council has convened a closed meeting on this date pursuant to an affirmative recorded vote in accordance with the provisions of the Virginia Freedom of Information Act, and whereas Section 2.2-3712 of the Code of Virginia requires a certification by the Farmville Town Council that such closed meeting is conducted in conformity with Virginia law. Now therefore be it resolved that the Farmville Town Council hereby certifies that to the best of each member's knowledge, only public business matters lawfully exempted from open meeting requirements by Virginia law were discussed in the closed meeting to which this certification resolution applies, and only such public business matters as were identified in the motion convening the closed meeting were heard, discussed, or considered by the Farmville Town Council.
Okay. Motion second. Madam Clerk?
Mr. Cole?
Yes.
Mr. Hunter?
Yes.
Mr. Benson?
Yes.
Mr. Parrott?
Yes.
Mr. Dwyer?
Yes.
Mr. Reed?
Yes.
And Ms. Agnes?
Yes.
Okay, we are out of closed session, and I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Motion and second, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Ayes have it. Meeting adjourned.
You're down 5-4, bro. You're down to